because we've been working on a voluntary basis on preparing North Compound, the parade ground and the theatre, we knew exactly where to go and where the tunnels would be. It had already been decided that we'd concentrate on 3 tunnels. I say we, I mean, that doesn't include, I mean, I'm talking about general, it's not a personal sort of thing, if you like. Now, previously, tunnels had all been made on a sort of individual group basis. As I say, half a dozen blokes or so, or even up to 20 would get together and say, put a case to the escape committee, we'd like to try the tunnel from there or wherever it was, and away they'd go. This time, under the direction of a squadron leader Bushell, who was known as Big X. He was known as Big X because each hut had a little X, chap in charge of security in each hut. They were the sort of escape committee, and this was under the command of squadron leader Bushell. It was decided that we should limit it to 3 tunnels, and everybody who wanted to be involved with it would be concentrate on these 3 tunnels. The decision of where? Well, there's one, I mentioned there was one entrance into the compound, so Hut 123 was there. As far away as possible from there, okay, an obvious thing. But it could have been any of these 3, but we decided on that one. Dick was to be a little bit crafty, or an inside hut. They would never suspect that a tunnel was going from there. It meant increased distance, of course, but that was accepted. The 3rd tunnel, Harry, was to be from Hut 104. As near as we dare go to the entrance, that it would give us even a man running at top speed from there to there. It would take him at least 30 seconds. And that would give us ample time to shut down the trapdoor if it was still open, and get rid of any incriminating factors. Incidentally, I lived in Hut 104, just about that end. Harry was from there, the end. I was from that end. The main danger, of course, is the trapdoor. That's why they'd raised the huts 1 metre. But wherever there was a chimney, a fireplace, or a washroom, there'd got to be concrete foundations. So concrete foundations down to the ground, the soil. So that was where it was decided that the trapdoor should be. Harry was to be under the famous stove. Disconnected the fireplace when it was lit, and an extension with the chimney with milk tins. The base, all these tiles were lifted individually and replanted onto a wooden platform. This could be lifted up with lugs on the side here and hinged right to the back, and then the trapdoor was in underneath there. There is a photograph of that. A bit indistinct, I admit, but there you can see this was the original stove, and there is the excavated trapdoor and the shaft underneath it. As soon as we walked in, obviously we created chaos, quite deliberate. If you remember, those who've seen the film saw the wagons going in and out. Well, that's exactly what did happen. And we did it deliberately because that meant that the security men were engaged while we started on the trapdoors. How do you disguise the sound of a pickaxe going through concrete? Well, any POW, as soon as he walks into a camp or compound, the first thing he wants is cooking utensils. So, Red Cross tins, a block of wood, and the thing off the handle off the stove, bashing away. You get 20 men in a group bashing away on tins like that, it will hide any sound of a pickaxe going through concrete. In any case, it wasn't hard concrete. It had only been there down for 6 months or more, so it's still fairly soft. Within 4 weeks, all the trapdoors were completed and we started on the digging. Not everybody was involved with the tunnelling. It was only on a voluntary basis. You persuaded some people. There was the elite diggers, if you like. There was about, I suppose about 40 were actually diggers as such. But then there was all the support staff, the people who had to, penguins who had to distribute the sand coming out. There was just 250 of those. There was 300 stooges. This was people who were security on warning. I mean, they were working on, it's a 24-hour basis of making sure that any German that came in was tagged and knew exactly where he was and sort of what danger he posed. And then there was all the forgers and the map makers and that. So there'd be over 800 people actually involved in some shape or form with the tunnelling, but very few people actually knew where the entrances were. I happened to be orderly to Wally Floody, who was the chief engineer of the mining, and I was often in their room and heard them sort of talking, so I knew where they were. And I mean, I lived in hut 104, so I knew where Harry was because, I mean, that was our hut. And my principal job was very mundane, of keeping the corridor clean. Now, digging in sand is relatively easy. The preferred tool is sort of builder's trowel. You want to pinch it or you make one. 4 weeks we got to the bottom of the shaft, 30 feet deep down, but it meant it all had to be shored. The shoring was from the double bunks we all had, wooden bunks, and the sides were the bed boards. Initially we started working naked, but it was found that you got sand scars on your elbows and on your hips, so that you would be known as a digger if it continued. So eventually we had to finish up with the long johns and long sleeve vests. Very uncomfortable, very hot, but very necessary. But it's sort of overarm swimming motion. You drag the soil to your hip, and this second man loaded up onto the railway. The railway itself, we made these, again, part of the bunks, and the wheels, each man had a 4-legged stool with a hard beechwood top. Cut two circles out, one less than the other, stick them together, and you've got a flange wheel. That is an actual picture of the railway and the little wagon we can pay. The rope was made from plaited Red Cross string. Come September, Tom had just got to the outside of that wire, we calculated. And he thought that within a couple of weeks, we would be within the forest. Security must have been lapsed or somewhere. The Germans were certain we'd got a tunnel in hut 123. So after roll call, one day, the inhabitants of 123 came back and they found guards all round, and they were kept out for a whole week while they searched that block to find out where the tunnel was. They were astounded when they saw how far it had gone and how near we were to success. But that meant that Dick was aborted. It was no good. It hadn't even reached the wire by that time. But it meant that all efforts were concentrated on Harry. You've all seen pictures of this. Room 23 of hut 104, 30 feet deep down, the ventilation, the workroom, the sand store, and then the tunnel itself. The overhead distance, that was calculated. We knew the sort of dimensions and we manufactured a sextant, and after all, we'd got navigators, trained navigators. If they couldn't find out distances, who could? After many sort of, well, alarms and near being found out, and odd falls, yes, we did have the falls, and people got buried, but fortunately there was not enough to, we always managed to drag the man out. We reached the estimated distance, 348 feet. Then became, well, before we got to that, there was a debate of whether we should go straight up, go to the distance and go straight up, or start on an incline so that we're nearer the surface by the end of the tunnel. But the incline was ruled out because if one of the trolleys had broken loose and had rumbled down and broken some of the shoring away, the chap at the end would be completely lost. So it was decided we go right to the end and dig upwards. Now digging down is easy, digging along is not bad really, but digging upwards is the worst job you can ever think of, because you're standing on a ladder and you've got to hold on with one arm, with the other you've got to start digging up above. And if you've ever held your arms up there for more than 10 minutes, they feel as if they're dropping off. But you've got to do more than 10 minutes, and all the soil is dropping all around your head. So you dig half of it up, cover that up, and then dig the other half up and sure that. Very slow progress, very hard progress, and very tiring. However, it was completed on the 14th of March, 1944. Which started on the 1st of April, 43. Decision went to breakout because we knew we would reach the tree roots, and pushing a wire up through it, we found that it was no obstruction up higher, so we knew we were near the surface. So it was boarded up, and we waited for the next moonless period. And this happened to be the Friday, the 24th of March. It was no good going on a Saturday because the trains there was very few trains on a Saturday, so it had to be no later than a Friday night. So that was the 24th of March.